Kinderlach. But you're Yocheved.
Yeah.
She's Rivka. You're Chaya. It's Chana.
Yes.
You're not Ariel.
No.
And the girl sounds like Ariel, or thinks it sounds like Ariel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liat? No,
No.
you're not Liat. Give me a minute. If I don't get it, you'll tell me.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so here's the situation, people. We have to finish last week's and start this week's. I got up early this morning to work on the and I got into trouble. I don't know.
Oh.
The trouble I got into was that the rabbis didn't say what I wanted them to say. They're supposed to behave. They're supposed to do what I tell them. You're Basia. Chadov. This is bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, I knew Yaf. I was just lazy. If I would have gone, I would have found it. If I would look, I would find it. Seek and you shall find. Okay. You ready? Okay, what's your name?
Yeah.
Yael. I told you it's like what I said before, Ariel. Yael,
Yeah.
close enough. Yeah. I was afraid to say Yael, so they're too similar to Ariel, but okay, Yael. Okay, good. I didn't remember your name. Okay, you want to be insulted? Go ahead. It gives you pleasure. I wouldn't want to deprive you of a great pleasure. Great pleasure of life is being disappointed. Okay. Now, people, here's the deal. Here is the deal. And this is this week's notes. And this is last week's notes. Okay, we haven't finished last week's class. So we'll do that now. Then we'll drink some poison. We'll come back and do this. We'll start this week's class. Okay, we're not going to finish obviously. Or I'm not going to be here next Wednesday. When is Hanukkah vacation in the home?
18th to 22nd December.
Oh,
wow.
speech.
Is that next week?
Thursday.
It's
no,
Thursday,
Oh.
it's
Monday. Thursday, I think so, yeah.
The last couple of days of Hanukkah, in other words.
Yeah.
So December 25th is 1 week after Hanukkah. When do we start to say Messiah Talamota? Today's the 3rd already, right?
Thursday
Night?
night? I think Thursday night.
Thursday night, okay. It's tomorrow night, we should remember. It is important. We're ready? Are we ready, Kinderlach? Yes, we're ready,
Yes.
people. Yes, okay, very good. Now, listen. We're doing Baruch Sha'amar, but we're doing Baruch Sha'amar in a certain flavor, right? And a year from now, I don't know when, I'm gonna get back to Baruch Sha'amar again. We'll do a different flavor. We'll do the mystical flavor, the Kabbalah Hasidic flavor. We are doing the flavor of the Rishonim, of the earlier rabbis. That means people who lived before and after the Rambam, the Rashba, the Ramban, and people like that. Earlier Rishonim, middle Rishonim, late Rishonim. And they maintain that in the various baruchs of Baruch Sha'amar, Baruch, a bunch of times, some say 10, some say 15, some say 11, some say 12, some say 13, don't ask. You have each one of the 10 utterances of creation, as we have been developing over the last few months. We are in the middle of Baruch Menachem Alabriyas, which means if you have this page, which you better, if you're on this page, we'll get angry at you. Or not get angry, it's nasty, okay? If you have this page, it's number Number 6. Baruch Meracham Alabris is number 6 on your page. Okay, in the Hebrew side you have numbers, in the English side the numbers are beginning to fade because the copy has been copied so many times. Okay, but number 6 reads, blessed is he who has compassion on creatures. Okay, 5 reads, blessed he with compassion on the earth. 6 reads, blessed he with compassion on the creature. That's what we're doing. What you know from last week's class, that this line 6 is the 5th utterance. It's the 5th of the 10 utterance. And the 10 utterance of creation. The first is, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. The second one is, there should be light. The third one is, there should be separations amongst the heavens. The fourth one is, that there should be a landmass. There should be terra firma. The continent should rise up and the water should descend so there'd be room for us to walk around. And the 5th is that the entire landmass, the entire surface of the earth is blanketed with life, right? With trees, with grasses, with moss and mosses and all kinds of other forms of vegetation. And a little bit, we talked about this last week, that this is really a living planet. It really is a living planet. And I gave you the example that I always use. I read this 25 years ago. I'm not going to find it. There are things that I read, I saved the magazines, but I'm never going to find it. Where there's a little article that writes that they have these wasted rods of nuclear material that they use for energy, not for bombs, but for energy. It used to be a time that the world used to use nuclear energy to keep the cities, the lights on, as they say. Then they stopped using it because there were a couple of little accidents, medium accidents, and then in Chernobyl you had a big accident. It's not a joke, a very big accident. I don't know if it's still true, but there's parts of Russia that are completely uninhabited by people, big cities that everybody moved out, and the wild animals are moving in, and they send in these drones to watch what's happening. The animals are creating niches, they're creating, there's a word for it, places to live, in people's homes, and people's basements, people's attics. It's fascinating. Now the animals are being poisoned by radioactivity. There's a sign that says do not enter, but they're not listening, I don't know. And it became, people decided not to do it anymore. I personally, I said to people last week, I think it's a mistake. You can be careful. And it's extremely clean and efficient. And I think ultimately it's even cheap. But anyway, bottom line is these rods of this very, very, very radioactive material, it doesn't last forever. It's used up. But when it's used up, it's not dormant. It's still radioactive. So you have to put it in a safe place. So they buried them under the mountains of Arizona, I believe, or New Mexico, and they have to check to see that there's no leakage. And they opened up these canisters, these big, big containers that are, I don't know, a mile beneath the surface of the earth, and they found organisms living on these rods. That blows my mind. Because radioactivity means death. That's what it is. For something to be alive, it has to be organized. For something to be death, it has to be disorganized. There's a reason organisms are called organisms, because they're organized. And they're organized down to the cellular level, down to the atomic level. Then you have radioactivity. Its whole idea is to rip apart or to take it apart, take it apart, take it apart, make things come to pieces. That's why it's so dangerous. That's why it's so deadly. And you got creatures who are living on it. They eat it, which is mind-blowing. In other words, they regenerate, they renew their bodies, they retain their order so efficiently that they could live on death itself. At the time, I don't know what's going on, but I read this article a very long time ago, and they were saying maybe we could use these bugs to eat up all the radioactive stuff, but I don't know, maybe they decided against it. I don't know. This is a living planet, right? And one of the symptoms of living planet in the Torah is that the Eibishter created the surface of the earth as a place, as a means to provide nourishment, food for all living things. That's how it's explained. That's how the Rishonim explain Tachi Odas Desh. Now, of course, if you were a biologist, you would say, what are you talking about? Everything eats everything. In other words, the plants aren't feeding the animals. The plants are feeding and being fed by the animals. Just like the animals are feeding and being fed by the plants. It's a big circle. It's an equal circle. Torah doesn't hold of an equal circle. Torah holds of an equal line, equal direction. Minerals feed plants, plants feed animals, animals feed people, and people serve God. That's the way it is in Torah. There's also a cycle, but it's not a circle, it's a line. So the Rishonim, many of them say that the Eibishter created a living planet with so much variety of different types of living vegetation that it can provide nourishment, food for all the living things on the face of this earth. Right? So that's Baruch Menachem Alabrius. Hashem has mercy on all of his creations, that he provides them all with food. This was the conversation we were having last week, that the earth is a blanket of grasses and trees and sedges and whatever else. So we should have what to eat, all of us, not just human beings, but even animals and plants, everything. The Eibishter made a world that's constantly providing us with nourishment. And the truth of the matter is, it's pretty cool how it all works out. I mean, the coolest of the cool is the interrelationship between what they call aerobic animals, oxygen breathing creatures, and plants, right? They need carbon dioxide for their sustenance, right? There's a whole process. I read about it. It's very technical. The sunlight gives them electrons, and they take in water, which have to break up into H2O. They take out the hydrogen, they separate the oxygen. The oxygen they don't need, they throw it out, and they keep the two molecules of hydrogen that comes along with the molecule of oxygen, and they add to it an electron that comes from the sun, and they mix it with the carbon dioxide, and they create the cellular parts of a plant. It's a circle. They eat our waste, we eat their waste, and everybody wins, and it all happened by itself, of course. And it's incredible how the Eibishter made the world. But the Siddur says that Hashem has mercy on all of his creation, and the mercy in all his creation is explained to mean the fifth utterance, the fifth of the 10 utterances of creation, that the earth is blanketed with life. Hashem has provided enough food for all living things to live on. Finished. That's how we're going to explain it. But specifically, it's about plant life as opposed to animal life, which we're going to get to in the later utterance. And of course, what we talked about last week was the idea that many of the Rishonim are saying that there is hashgacha pratis, like the Baal Shem Tov said. Even though we know the Baal Shem Tov was a late comer to the debate of hashgacha, and many of the Rishonim argue with the Baal Shem Tov, and they hold that plants do not have hashgacha pratis, animals do not have hashgacha pratis. They have what's called hashgacha kfalis, general oversight and not specific oversight. But many of the Rishonim translate the words Baruch Merachem Alabrius, blessed is be he who has mercy on all of his creations, that there's hashgacha pratis on all animals and all living things, and Hashem provides each living thing with a specific morsel of food which lives in it, eat and want to live on. That is a summary of last week's class. Some Rishonim don't have two Baruch HaMerachem, they have only one. Right? In other words, if you have this page handy, and you better, because Allah is going to get angry, it's not good to not get angry. We have numbers 5 and 6. Line 5 is Baruch Merachem Al-Arz, blessed he has mercy on the earth. This is the utterance of creation about there being land rising up above the sea, then we can walk around on earth because the whole planet is not covered with water. And Baruch Merachem Al-Abrius means that this landmass, this earth, which has been exposed and raised above the water, is a blanket of life, a blanket of grasses that feed all the creation living on the earth, right? And of course, you remember from 3 classes ago that the meaning of an achamim is Hashem created a world, and he's hiding from his world. But he sweetens that hiding, he softens that hiding by giving some of himself to the world, so the world should not such have a hard time discovering him. And one of the aspects of that is rachamim, one of the aspects, that, so to speak, the revelation of Hashem, which makes it easier for us to know him and to serve him, is the fact that Hashem provides us with nourishment with life so easily. This was last week's class. And I believe, I don't know, but I believe I mentioned the Mishnah in Masechta Kedushin to you. The last Mishnah in Masechta Kedushin talks about making a living, parnasa, vocation. And the Mishnah discusses you have to teach your children different things. Now, one of the things according to Jewish law you have to teach your children is, you notice? I'm a bad example because they didn't do it. You have to teach your children how to swim. It says in Gemara, it says no, but you're supposed to teach your children how to swim. It's a requirement. I remember being a little kid, my father was teaching me how to swim. My father barely knew how to swim. I didn't understand. My father wasn't the kind of guy to waste time with us. We had to beg him to play ball. All of a sudden, he's teaching me how to swim. Then I grew up and I found out the Gemara says a father's obligation teaches us. So my father taught me how to swim. All he did was hold me and teach me how to kick with my feet. That was the end of the lesson. My father wasn't into these things. He isn't into these things. Okay, but he taught me how to swim. Api Allah, you have to teach your children how to swim. It's one of those things. That's a Masechet Kedushin. And you also have to teach children a parnasa, vocation. And then the Mishnah goes on to say what parnasa to have. That's the list of, good jobs and bad jobs. People who are this are good guys, people that are bad guys. That's the famous Mishnah, How doctors shouldn't be trusted. That's the same Mishnah in Masechet Kedushin. In case you forgot it and didn't know it. But one of the things the Mishnah talks about is, if I had to teach my child a profession, I would teach him Torah. Because you never get too old. Other jobs, you burn out of, you physically can't do it. And they want to phase you out because you're in your retirement age and all kinds of other not attractive. Torah, it gets better with age. It's good when you're young, it's good when you're old. Now go make a living learning Torah. Halachically, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to charge for teaching Torah. You can just charge for your hours, not for the teaching, which is another whole conversation. Anyway, in the course of that Mishnah, the Mishnah is talking about parnasa, making a living. And it says, it's a very long Mishnah. It's a very long Mishnah. Okay? And the Mishnah says, Kol ha'olam kulei, lo nivra elo l'sham sheni. Everything Hashem created, all animals, all plants, all minerals, were created to serve man. Okay, what comes next? The debate of the Mishnah. I was created to serve my maker. Or the second expression that Rebbe would bring, I was created for no purpose other than a double negative. I was not created for any purpose other than to serve my creator. And yet, all living things find parnasa and they don't work hard. So if all creation serve me and they have such an easy time making a living, so why do I have such a hard time making a living? And the Mishnah goes on to say, I did things I'm not supposed to do and I made my parnasa hard. But the Mishnah makes reference to the fact that the Eibishter made the world in the kind of way that all living things have an easy time making a living. All living things have an easy time making a living. Whether you're a single-celled organism, or you're a simple complex-celled organism, or you're a very complex-celled organism, and you have a cord, and you have vertebrae, and you have I don't know what, and you're an endotherm, and all the other components of sophistication in life forms. The Eibishter made his world in such a way that everybody can find a meal. Now, sometimes your meal is somebody else. Everybody's meal is somebody else. Nobody lives on chemicals, right? You live on other living things. But as long as you're alive, as long as you're meant to live, parnasa is available. The Eibishter made it so that Hashem feeds all of us in a way that to find our parnasa is not difficult. Now, people find it's very hard to make a living. So the Mishnah in Kiddushin says, yeah, that's because we stunk it up. But we just do what we have to do. We'd be like all the other fish in the sea and the amphibians and the reptiles and the mammals and the birds. You need to find food, it's easy. Now, it's not so easy. It's not that easy. But it's not so hard. Or I guess the right way to put it is, they don't worry. Animals don't worry. They just go look for food. They go fodder. They go look for, what's the word? Forage for food, correct? Now, there's another thing I want to add to this. In terms of the ease with which we make a parnasa, there is a wonderful Rambam, which the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe of Lubavitch, quotes verbatim in its entirety in the very, very beginning of his classic series of Maimonim called Mayim Rabbim Tov Reish Lamed Vav. Tov Reish Lamed Vav is 1775, 1776. The very first chapter of that elongated essay, which is over 200 chapters long, the Rebbe Marash quotes an entire chapter someplace in the section 3 of the Rambam's Guide to the Perplexed. What does the Rambam write? The Rambam writes that even for human beings, making a living isn't difficult. The problem is, what we need, in quotes, is far more than making a living. We have a hard time making up our nosa because it's not enough to feed ourselves. We need to be entertained. We need to keep up with the Joneses. We need things that you don't need. And this is where the risk comes in. He brings a pasuk which I can't remember. Aveles Adam Misalev Darke. I forgot the whole pasuk, but the Rambam brings this pasuk and the Marash quotes this pasuk that if people would just live simple, they would have no problem. And the Rambam writes famously that the most important need the human being has is air. Air. It's free. The second most important need that a human being has is
Water?
water. It's virtually free. And the Rambam goes through this in the classic Rambams. The Rambam has a capacity to make the most sophisticated things just so simple. That's part of the genius. You know, what we really need is not hard. The reason it's hard is because we need a lot. And a lot of those needs are not needs, they're desires, they're jealousies, they're very, very extraneous. And he gives the illustration of people who would go hunting for pearls. Now today you want to go hunting for pearls. I mean, today you can have pearls, you can have oyster farms that you use pearls. You want to have natural pearls. And I guess there's a difference between pearls that grow in the ocean and pearls that grow in the lab. Somehow they're not as good, right? So, but pearls live inside oysters. And oysters are, you know, shellfish. They attach themselves to the bottom of the sea, and that's where they hang out and they do pearls. You got to go down, you got to get it, you got to bring them up. The problem is, when people were hunting for pearls 1,000 years ago, they didn't have oxygen tanks. So some people went for pearls holding their breath. And you see that even now, there's certain cultures that people have trained themselves to hold their breath for a long period of time, almost 100 seconds. I mean, far longer than you and I can. They just figured out how to do it. They don't get the bend. They can do it. And I suppose on some level, it isn't just discipline and self-control. It's adaptation. Now, the body adapts. The body adapts very quickly. In other words, evolution is truer than evolutionists think. The body adapts incredibly, incredibly quickly. I read an article once, I'm sorry for digressing, that argues that there are human beings, Homo sapiens, not me and you, who have incredibly well-developed olfactory sense. The nose. They smell like dogs. Not they smell like dogs, they can smell like dogs. They're like bears. Their sense, their olfactory sense is like 50, 60 times better than ours. Why? Because they live in dense jungle and they cannot see. The human sense, right? Our human beings were designed to use the audio sense, the visual sense. It's the best way you can see it from far away. Goes like monkeys. But if you live in very dense undergrowth, your eyes are not very helpful. So what would you use next? Your ears, correct? If for whatever reason there's so much noise that your ears will not give you a clear sense of your environment, the human beings alive today who have what evolutionists would call, 2 million year old nose. Olfactory sense, that's nose is considered one of the most primitive senses. Right? The only thing lower than smell is taste and touch. Right? That's why the simplest animals navigate the environment by touch. Animals are more sophisticated, navigate the environment by smell and by taste. Smell and taste are very similar. And human beings alive today, if they live in dense environments, have very low blood flow. What does it prove? It proved the idea of what they call gradualism, that things change slowly. It's just not true. You put a person in an environment that's hard for him to see in a very short time, not in a million years, in a couple of generations, maybe even less. They'll develop the senses necessary to know their environment sufficiently to be able to survive and get through it. It's fantastic. And this is not the truth. All animals are the same way. The Abishna made us extremely adaptable, extremely adaptable. We evolved very quickly, very, very fast to our environment, to our access to food and to shelter and to whatever else that we need. What's another conversation? This is another conversation. Okay? If you want to think about an animal that's under stress, that's going to evolve in our lifetime, and everybody talks about, this is the prediction from the Rabbi in Brooklyn, it's the polar bear. Okay, if you want to know what I think is going to happen to the polar bear, I'll tell you after class, but we're not talking about that because I really have no idea what I'm talking about, because that's what gives me the qualification to talk, because if I really knew, I'd keep quiet. But okay, anyway, the point is that there's human beings who can hold their breath for a long period of time. Another technique they used to use years ago was they build these glass cups with a hose at the end for oxygen. And you would climb into this cup and they would lower you into the water as the cup is filled with air. You know, you take a cup and turn it upside down and push it straight down into the water, the cup is full of air. So the air does not allow the water to fill the cup. You have a safe place. Now, the cup tips like this, it tips like that, the oxygen flies out, and the cup fills with water and so on. So the Rebbe actually describes, this is the mind of the book, and I'm not describing it, and the Rebbe actually quoting him, of the risks people took to hunt for pearls. And how many of the people who went down there died because the cup cracked, or the cup tilted, and there was a little bit of space for the oxygen to escape, the water filled the emptiness and boom. And what's the essence of it? It's the desperation for wealth. For wealth, things I don't need. If human beings, says the Rambam, would satisfy themselves with what are truly human needs, there's plenty. There's enough. And as the Mishnah says in Kedushin, even though the Mishnah seems to be suggesting that human beings have a harder time making a living, the Rambam says it's really not that hard. It's hard because the definition of making a living exceeds making a living by so much, right? What are the differences? What's the difference? Here's a great question. What's the difference between a need and a want? What's the difference between a need and a want? I need food. I need air. You said I need companionship. I would agree with that. What's the difference between a need and a want? Ayal?
Ya'al.
Ya'el. I'm asking a question. What's the difference between a need and a want? Anybody know the answer to that question?
The need is something you can live without, and the want is something you could live without with.
A need is something you can't live without, and a want is something you could. Can you give me another way to say it? I'll tell you what the difference is. Needs don't change. What I need doesn't change. What I want changes every 6 months. Just look at Apple computers, Apple phones. Every 6 months, I have to buy a new one. Anish b'nechnish kamensh. Who decided? The guy's dead for 20 years. What's his name? He's still selling phones. Steve Jobs. He did a job on all of us. He did a job. I studied him. And he had descriptions of how he figured out how to charge people way more than something was worth and sell it in the kind of way where people said, thank you. He was a brilliant mind. He was obviously capable of creating very sophisticated machines, but he was a seller. Seller is the way to see it, but that's this guy, I guess it should spell it with both. He would overcharge you for a product, the same product made by somebody else, costed half the price, two-thirds the price, but you bought his, he had a whole scheme, how basically he shafted the whole world. he jobbed the whole world, Steve Jobs. Okay, anyway, so what's the point? The point is, the Mishnah says in Kedushin, human beings have a hard time making a living. The Rambam says if they really knew what making a living was, it's really not that. The Rambam was speaking on a philosophical level, speaking on a religious level. The reason human beings have hard to make a living is we want much more than to live. Animals just need 3 things. What do animals need? 3 things. Eat, not be eaten, and make babies. That's it. So really. Now, of course, to eat and not be eaten and make babies, you need something else. You need space. And they compete over space. And when the Abishna set up the animal world, they compete with one another. Interspecies and intraspecies. You understand? The ecosystem is set up. Many animals can share the same space, but different types of animals. The same animal says, excuse me, I need my 4 square miles or my 2 square miles or my 10 square inches. And if that's my place, I'm going to kill you. So that's the 4th need, right? Critical space. But human beings' lives are so much more complicated. Now, part of that is because of who we are, right? The Rambam also said human beings have to be social, we can't be solitary, because no human being can provide for himself all of the things he needs. One person cannot cook all of this food, harvest all of this food, prepare all of this food, cook all of this food, sew all of his clothing, build his home, educate his children, create the tools necessary for self-defense, arm and protect yourself. Human beings have so many needs. So we figured out how to live in a society where we divide up the needs. One bread for everybody, one makes clothing for everybody, one guy makes weapons for everybody, one guy teaches all the children, one guy oversees the safety, and so on and so forth. So our lives are very complicated. It's true. But there's still a point where of excess, where we don't just satisfy ourselves with parnasa to keep ourselves alive and functioning, but we want more. And the more that we want is really not necessary, and it's really about jealousy and ego and petty stuff, as we all know. So my point is, the Siddur says, "Barach baracham alavriyas." Hashem has mercy on all of us created. So the first thing is that Achmanis doesn't just mean he keeps us alive. In the way he keeps us alive, he reveals himself to us, right? That's the key. The Achmanis. Like Shitev Ime Midas Arachma. Hashem made a world through the name of the king, which means Hashem made a world the kind of way that he's hiding. And then he hybrided, he wove into the fabric of the world where he is hiding some revelation of himself, some gilui of the Eibishter, which is called in the Chazal, Rachamim, Hashem's mercy, and in the Chumash it's called Shem Nukhe Havaya, as opposed to Shem Elokim, the divine name Elokim, which means concealment, the divine name Havaya, which means compassion and mercy. And how does it play out? That Hashem makes making a living easy. And the particular Maimed, which speaks to this phenomenon, that Hashem makes making a living easy, that the earth is a living planet. The blanket was like, the earth was like, that pick it up and use it. Okay, now human beings have a bit of a harder time. The mission says because we stunk it up. The Rambam says because we've redefined the meaning of the word making a living into meaning stuff that we really do not need, and it's excessive. But we get the picture, right? We're good. That's the picture. So this becomes the fifth utterance of creation. So what is left for us to do now? What is left for us to do now? In other words, before we break and I go find my Natchez concoction, what's the last thing I need to talk about on these words? And that is, most of you come every week. You're regular, Baruch Hashem. People who walk in 1 week, I don't mind. People walk in 1 week and don't know how to shut up, I do mind. I'm sorry, I don't know how to keep quiet. It was 9. So you know how I'm doing this class. We're learning 2 words of Baruch Shama, one Maimed at a time, and each one I go back to the Abud Raham. The Abud Raham lived about 700 years ago. First name was Reb David Abud Raham. He wrote what is forever till the Mashiach comes at least. The best commentary on Siddur, the best by far. And I told you the story probably 10 times already. My father-in-law, Hashem, told me that if this father, I'm assuming that this Neman of great cross, this Neman, that the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Levavitcher Rebbe, who quoted that Murder the Buch that we talked about 10 minutes ago. Habrein was Chassidim. And Habrein, he talked about the meaning of the word Pnim. Pnim means people do something, things for themselves, not for the world around them. And the inside, not from the outside. It was a deep Fabrengen, and after the Fabrengen, the Chassidim came to the Rebbe Marash and said to the Rebbe Marash, can the Rebbe Marash give us an example of who is it? Who can they look to learn a lesson, or learn the lesson of previous which the Rebbe was trying to teach? And they figured that the Rebbe Rashab was going to send him to some senior chassid, some big machas, and really holy roller, who studied Torah for 60 years. And the Rebbe Marash said, go to my Shalom Bet, who was over 15 or 16 years old, my son, the Rebbe Rashab, who would later be the fifth Rebbe, but it was very, very nice. And they're a bit surprised, but they weren't surprised. And they went to the Rebbe Rashab apartment. The whole idea was they're gonna walk on him and whatever they're gonna see him doing, that's genius. What did they find him doing? He was Parshat studying singing. He was studying prayer. The Rebbe Rashab was an Oivid. The Rebbe Rashab was a Yidden. Every day davening was a new word. He's famous for it, that's what he tried for it. And part of that is knowing the meaning of the words of davening. So how do you find out the meaning of the words of davening? So 60% of davening, which 70% of davening is straight up scriptures. It's Tanakh. It's taken from David, taken from Psulim, taken from Torah. So you have to take out, study Tanakh, study Tillim, study whatever the source of the passage is about. The other 30 or so percent was written by the Anshe Knesset Haggadah, the members of the Great Assembly, and they compiled an original text of prayer in Hebrew, which I talked many times about, to help us pray. And then I'm right, because you can only pray in one language, and you have to speak clearly. One language became intertwined, and every language had worse than other languages. I can't study those. I found that they wrote a text of prayer, and Nusach HaTzil, which we all use. But even the prayer of the Anshe Knesset Haggadah, which is not directly scriptural is indirectly. How? Because every line of Siddur is a adaptation, is a chain of some biblical matter. But there's only one rabbi who actually bothered to tell you which. That's the Abud Raham. The Abud Raham goes through every line of the Siddur. If it's not straight up Sukkim and Tanakh, he tells you which pasuk in the Navi speaks to this line. It's really, really remarkable. It really is. This morning, I did a lot of work. I mean, I had to create a sheet, which is going to be the next class. The class will go slow enough. But I was forced to look through the Abud Raham. Baruch Shama, in the Abud Raham, the way at least why I did it on my see, I have a Word document that I cut and paste, and then I rearrange it. Every 3-4 words in the Word is another pasuk in Tanakh. It's incredible. Ouch. He goes through every single line of every single tefillah that's not a pasuk and tells them it comes from the. And we've done this. We started Baruch Shalom, each sequence, each utterance of creation, which gets, I think this is our third class on Baruch Menachem Alavriyas, if I'm not wrong. The last part of each piece is what does the Abud Raham quote as the source for that particular utterance. So we're reading the words Baruch Menachem Alavriyas, correct? You're supposed to say yes, okay?
Yes.
Hashem has mercy to creation. And it's the second Rachamim, right? Baruch Menachem was the first, Baruch Menachem for the second, and we decided, trying to say this, I'm not making this up, that this means that Hashgacha Pratis is not just for human beings, it's for every living thing. Hashem provides specific nourishment to every single creation. As the Gemara says in Masechta Chulin, the Alter Rebbe wants to prove that the Baal Shem Tov is right, and he found the source in the Gemara. In the Gemara, which was written 1,500 years ago, way before the theologians started arguing about Hashgacha Pratis, that Hashem arranges a specific fish for a particular cormorant, or for a particular stork, or for a particular, what are you supposed to say now? Last week you knew. No, what's the bird with the big chin?
Oh, pelican.
Pelican, right? Hashem decides which specific fish. Fish are schools, thousands and thousands and thousands of fish, and they go dive bombing, and everyone's making a living on the poor fish. So the obvious truth is Hashem makes sure the species survive. There's enough eggs left over for this eggs to hatch and be another generation of fish, and everyone's going to take a turn eating them. But Hashgacha Pratis says every one of those fish has got a plan designed by God, and which particular fish is going to be eaten, which particular pelican, which particular stork, which particular cormorant is predetermined. That is a Talmudic source for the Baal Shem Tov view and Hashgacha Pratis way before the Baal Shem. So if you hold that Baruch She'omer has two Baruch Menachem, you hold that Hashgacha Pratis is not just on people, it's also an animal. And there are some rabbis who only have one. They don't have two Baruch Menachem. Some of them have Baruch Menachem Alarit, some of them have Baruch Menachem, but they don't have both. I decided this I made up, okay? And the lot of things that I made up, trust me. that the reason they only have one Baruch Menachem is because they do not believe in Hashgacha Pratis and them. What are the Rishonim? I think it will tell us a mincha. He has two Baruch HaMenachem. There's two. But the second Baruch HaMenachem, he says, this means human beings and angels, not animals. He has two Baruch HaMenachem, but he says, but I don't believe that this means that animals have Hashgacha Pratis. It only means people and angels. That's his. You know, he's clear. He's careful to point out that even though it says Baruch HaMenachem twice, and a lot of the rabbis say that the second Baruch HaMenachem is proof that there's Hashgacha Pratis even on plants and animals and minerals. He says, I'm going to put two in, but the second one is only for human beings and angels, not for animals. So he tells you, I'm putting two in, but I don't agree with the other guys who hold that the second Baruch HaMenachem proves there's Hashgacha Pratis even plants and animals and minerals. You follow what I'm saying? So, what's left for us to do is to open up the Abud Raham, as I did, and see which word the Abud Raham considers the source of this Baruch HaMenachem al Habriyas. The second, blessed be he who has mercy. The two have mercy, right? The first has mercy on the earth. This is about people. We should be able to walk the earth and serve Hashem, and to use Hasidic language, even though we're not learning Hasidus for sure this time around. Last is that Rabbi Bechai writes it clearly about this. The Rabbi Bechai was a Rishon way before Hasidus writes that the idea that the land masses rose up and that the sea fell into the water on the base of the bowl, so there's this place for creatures to walk on the earth, is so we should be able to make a home for Hashem in the lowest level. He quotes the Medrash, the Hasidus quote. So that's mercy. God has mercy on human beings to be able to fulfill their mission. But the second Baruch HaMenachem is not a human being; it's an every living thing. So, what are the Abud Raham's words? And the answer is, we say it every day in davening. Toiv Hashem lakoil v'rachamav al kol masav, which is an ashter. The words v'rachamav al kol masav, Hashem is good to all. Toiv Hashem lakoil, Hashem is good to all. V'rachamav, and His mercy al kol masav, all the things He did. So the Abud Raham says that's the source of Baruch Menachem Habriyas. And the corollary is very obvious. It's not just people. It's every living thing. You're alive, Hashem looks after you. You're alive, Hashem doesn't just look after your kind, He looks after you specifically. Rachamav, Hashem is mercy, which means Hashem is revealed involvement of if He made you, He looks at it. That's the Abud Raham's biblical source for these few words, Baruch Menachem Habriyas. I'm reminded of a Chazal. Which you have really, I think, in more than one place. But one of them is when the sea split. Remember the sea split? We walked through, it came out the other side, right? But something else happened then. What else happened then? A bunch of people died. A bunch of people. I mean, an awful lot of people died, right? We forget that part of the story. Why? Because we won. We move on. We picked the spoils off their body. You understand? We took the gold and silver and diamonds off their bodies and walked off. But a lot of people died. The Egyptians were killed. Now, of course, they had it coming. They were really donkey-esque in a very profoundly original way. They overdid it, However you explain it, they really, really were being obnoxious. They had it coming to them. But the Chazal say that the angels started singing praise to Hashem. And Hashem said to the angels, why are you singing? My creations are dying and you're singing? Now, ask me a question. The Jews sang Shira. Did they not? Oh, Yoshe, Moshe, Bnei Yisrael. We sang song. Nobody complained to the Yidden. So why did Hashem complain to the angels? Come on, and they were working great in the room. Guess wrong, but guess. Because our lives were in danger. The Egyptians were pursuing us. They weren't pursuing the angels. Our lives were in danger. Hashem made a miracle and saved us at their expense. We have every right to praise Hashem. What are the angels getting involved? Their lives were not in danger. They like the Jews. I like the Jews too. Hashem likes the Jews. But Hashem says, my creations are dying. What are you singing? The Yid had every right to sing because it was either him or me. Me or him. Yeah. But the Hashem, this is the meaning of Ma'aseh. The things Hashem did. If Hashem did you, He rachamems you. The rachamim of kol ma'aseh. The Eibusher created you, even if you're not on the highest level of priority, even at the most important creation and the most lofty creation. He just wanted the stuff that He made. If He made you, He has mercy on you, and He made sure you have what you need. The rachamim, Hashem's mercy, the kol ma'aseh, all the things He made. Now, I was obviously prepared. And there's a Gemara. It's a famous Gemara. I knew the Gemara. And today with Google, I'm a genius. So all I gotta do is type in the words and they give me the page and the line of the verse and all the commentary. It's amazing. They say, you want to know someone's a scholar? Talk to him on Shabbos. But during the week, everyone's a scholar. It's really true. So there's two psukim. Tov Hashem Lakoil, which is an Ashrei, which in Psalm, the Rachmul Hamakol. There's another but the Tov Hashem Lakoil, which I think is an Eicha, Lamentation. Hashem is good to all those who hope it, who believe it, who trust it. And the Gemara actually asks the question: is the goodness Hashem for all, or is the goodness Hashem for those who trust in Hashem? There's a difference between Tov Hashem Lakoil and Tov Hashem Lakoil. And the Gemara gives a fascinating answer, a really interesting answer, which in context makes what I'm saying a little bit complicated, but only a little bit. If you have a field, yeah? If you have a field and you want to produce, you name the crop. Strawberries. Okay, so you're going to plow the field. How do you plow the field? It depends where you live. Today you use a big fat spanking truck. Like in the old days, you took an animal, you harnessed it up. At the back of the harness, you hung a plow, and you make sure the animal plow in a straight line, and you make lines. Goes back, goes forth. Every line you make, right? After you draw lines in the ground, what do? You put seeds in. Right? You spread out the seeds. And then, in a little while, it's going to get to sprout, and you have to protect it from the rabbit and all the other food, right? That's the way it goes. And the last thing you do is you water it. So the Gemara says, when a guy is running a plow, does he say, okay, stop plowing because the next 10 feet I'm not planting, or you just go straight? If a guy is watering a field, will he say, don't waste the water on this spot because I'm not planting with strawberries? But when a person throws seeds into the ground in a spot that it doesn't expect it to go. So the Gemara, when you plow the whole field. When you water the whole field. When you lay the seed, you put the seed where you want. Why? A, it's expensive. And B, it takes time. It's quicker to plow straight than to stop and to start. It's quicker to irrigate the whole field than to irrigate only that particular patch that you want the strawberries to grow. When you put the seeds in the ground, you put them only where you want them. So the Gemara says, Tov Hashem Lakoil, Hashem is good to everybody, is the way you plow a field, when you water it. Tov Hashem Lakoil, Hashem is good to those who trust Him, is the way you put seeds in the ground. This is a Gemara. It's a classic Gemara. Believe me, if I know it, it's a classic Gemara. I went to yeshiva. I lived there in my life. Not just in yeshiva. I've been living there my whole life. I'm a very lucky guy. So that could sound like, Hashem is not paying attention to everybody. But the pasuk, Tov Hashem Lakoil, Hashem is good to all, finishes with the three words that the Abu Draham now quotes, that Hashem's mercy extends to everything, which means that although when you seed, you don't see the whole field, you just see the certain plots, and the rest of it you don't see. When you plow the whole field. When you water the whole field, which means this is hard to explain. And I talked about it last week a little bit, and I don't want to spend that much time on it. That even if you believe in Hashgacha Pratis, there can be a difference between Hashgacha Pratis and one creation and Hashgacha Pratis and another. One of the differences is whether the Hashgacha Pratis makes sense. And the other difference is, the bigger difference, is whether that creation that Hashem is overseeing specifically is being overseen specifically because of the benefit of that creation, or because that creation serves another creation. Hashem is involved in everything. When he's involved in people's sake, for the sake of people. He's involved in animals' sake, because animals serve people, like the Mishnah in Kedushin that I started this class with. Hashem has plants and animals. They're here to serve us. They get hashgacha pratis, so we should have what to eat. We get hashgacha pratis, so we should have what to eat. So you could say two levels in hashgacha pratis. That although Hashem oversees, gives life to all, good to all creations, not just to the very special ones. But that goodness is with the rachamim, with the mercy, with the compassion, meaning there's hashgacha pratis on every single creation. In fact, to the point that, so to speak, defining these classes, these little, few classes we did last week and this week, Hashem makes sure that making a list for all things is not hard. Questions? Comments? No questions, no comments. Let's break. Okay, it's 11:45 already, if I can see the lasts. Yeah. Let's try to do, I think there's something later. Let's come back here in about 5 minutes or so. We're going to start the next one. And this is going to be probably the disaster, the two. We're holding by the sixth utterance, right? What's the sixth utterance? There should be a sun and the moon and the stars. It's represented in Baruch She'amar, but not in our text. Our Baruch She'amar doesn't have it. You know why? In my opinion, because our Baruch She'amar is Kabbalistic. The Kabbalists have a whole different way of understanding Baruch She'amar. The earlier rabbis had a longer Baruch She'amar than the later ones do, because they were not worried about this magical number 87. The Kabbalists are very concerned with the number 87. The early rabbi said, I got 100 words in mine, I got 110 in mine, don't bother with it. As many words as I want. And they include entire additional lines that represent the 10 utterances. For example, take out your pack, take different words, which of course, if you don't have them in to get angry, you're going to get angry and it's very messy. Yeah. And doing it Rambam. The reason of doing it Rambam is because the Rambam's got the right order. The Rambam looks like this. The one that Rambam was on top of the page. Okay, Rambam, top of the page. Yeah. It may look like Rambam, but it's an R. Yeah. Read to the beginning. Baruch She'amar the first, right? Baruch Ayla the Asa is the second one. Baruch Yezim Chaim is the third one. Baruch Menachem is the fifth one. Is the fourth one. Baruch Menachem Alabrius is the fifth, right? What are the next words? Baruch Ma'avir Afela or maybe Ayla. We don't got that. Now Baruch Misham Sokateh we do have. But the one after that, Baruch She'ein Lefan Loyav Leishik Leichad Leimin Leimazman Leimakach. We don't have that either. They do. Because they include each one of the 10 utterances, and to this effect, they add extra baras. Okay? I mean, I'm a nice guy, because he puts them in the right order. Our anchor is the Abud Raham. The problem with the Abud Raham is, he brings all these words, but they're not in the right place. They're not in the right order, which is enough to drive you mad. Okay? So we got a cup of coffee, I'll drive you mad in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you for being here, people.
Thank you.
It's pleasure mine. Ayal. Yael. When I get it wrong, I get it right. Oh. Okay. See you in 5. Is that the just correct? Right, you're correct, yeah.
Even a different book was if I really knew, I'd keep quiet. So true. That was good. If you know about anything, you're not gonna say anything.
I wrote down, Rabbi Paltiel said he had no idea what he's talking about in regards to, I think I wrote evolution, but I couldn't remember exactly what he said, but I thought that was something, but it's so true about everything, like, I'm doesn't speak, he's also knows the world. Exactly. That's a really good point. How was Mrs. Klein? Yeah. It was not actually really good, like, we just kind of sit there and talk, it's also being on the TV. You're very sweet. Thankfully, she's helping me out. Oh, actually? Usually she makes the girls speak that. What did she tell you? Was she telling you like you're involved in the school and everything? Oh, no. Not basically, I told her to Russia and then she went, she was Russian. Actually? Like she's from Russia? Oh, interesting. Yeah, she's not in my parents. Okay. Oh, really? What part? It's cute. But she's supposed to be Russian. Like, so like, we go.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna use Yona Ringel's case time. You just sit here and her hands would shake like this. She was an old lady. She was alone. I don't know if she was ever married. She probably became frum in her 70s, that kind of girl. She would come
I know
every
that.
Sunday. Every Sunday. She would sit in class. She was so sincere.
Mhm.
And she doesn't still live. Yona Ringel. I think when you think about a person, especially a person who has nobody, so you do something good for them. Spiritually, that's how I feel.
Хорошо.
Yona Ringel.
А,
Yona Ringel, a sweet Jewish lady.
до 4.
She was very lonely. At the end of her life, like I went to her. I remember her. Okay, today is the last day of Impossible Fita. Starting tomorrow becomes manageable. Oh, did you to have it? Now.
Consider? Yes, yeah, it's in the back. It's nice to tell you. I show some motion today, so. I'm in. They already ate. What?
I told her no.
She said she was okay. She, oh, I'm going to like that. We're not doing anything. And I think so, I think this is so less going to boundaries. Today. We're going to our speech, right? I still want to copy it for my friend. Yeah, no, it's okay, I'm gonna take it. Yeah, I mean, after dinner, we're gonna do it.
Yeah,
So,
it's the
I don't think you're going to.
It's fishing.
To the farm, right?
There's fish.
I don't think so, yeah. Because I also wanna do the book.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really busy these few days.
I'm gonna go to the store and get you the gun. Thank you. What am I? I don't know, but you go get another one.
This
You go to the pause.
is.
And look at the second line.
The first one.
And so you vote on it? You don't vote? I don't believe that. Oh. They're just gonna ask you about.
Are we ready to roll, Kindala?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, everybody needs one of these.
Oh, yeah, no. Oh. Hi.
That's funny.
I just watched it happen. Oh.
Yes.
Now, girls, I want to start this class with the juxtaposition, okay?
With a what?
A comparison.
Oh.
You all have this stack, right? Now, in a perfect world, we'd have three hands, okay? One hand, and the fourth hand would hold the banana, okay? One hand would hold our nusa. The other hand would hold the Rambam nusa. And the third hand would hold the Abu Dhabi nusa. But we only got two hands, okay? So let's just compare us, the Budraham to the Rambam. Because I don't look like it, because Ram Bam on top of the page. This is the Abu Draham, but I cut and paste the Abu Draham, and I took out all the extra words. I just love the text of prayer, okay? Now, what's fascinating is that Rambam doesn't write an explanation of the davening. He just writes the nusach. Rabbis who came after him write an explanation of the davening. And what's weird is the explanation of davening that they give works best in the Rambam's text, and have a different text. In other words, Abu Draham does what Abu Draham does. He goes through the Siddur, explains to the source of the paragraphs. But he brings another Sefer. In the Abu Draham, there's a book called Sefer HaMalamed. That means the book of the teacher. This Sefer HaMalamed doesn't just translate, doesn't just tell you the origin of the words. He explains to you the meaning of the words. And much of what we're doing, when I sit here and talk, I'm reading Sefer HaMalamed. I didn't make this up. I'm just not that smart. Okay, it's from this. There's a number of Rishonim. The Yehuda ben Yakar, not to be confused with the Yankov ben Yakar. These are two ben Yakars. One was the teacher of Rashi, like way back. And then the Yehuda ben Yakar was much later. He has the commentary on Siddur. The source of much of the material we share in this class either comes from the Sefer HaMalamed, I don't know who the author is, or the Yehuda ben Yakar, both later Rishonim. And they're the ones who, explain the meaning of the paragraphs. When I talk to you about Hashgacha Pratis, it's from them. I'm not making it up. And they're also the ones who align them with the 10 utterances, you see? So we did 5, got 5 left. We did, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, let there be light, let there be separation of the heaven, let there be a landmass, and let there be vegetation. We did 5 utterances, right? And it was in order, basically. The only free radical that was bouncing around, making us nervous, is Baruch HaSibirachis. It's in there someplace. I told you there's 3 opinions about Baruch HaSibirachis. Some rabbis don't have it at all. Some rabbis have it earlier. Some rabbis have it later, but nobody counts it. When you talk about the 10 utterances of creation, but Baruch HaSibirachis is an extra Baruch. It's not included in the 10. Now, so what is the next Baruch, which is the 6th utterance? So the answer is, okay, so which one are you going to hold in your right hand? Which one in your left hand? Huh? Which is which? You know the story, right? When they started the Civil War, they recruited soldiers. Who were the soldiers? They were farmers. I mean, America was America, a land of individuals and private ownership and hard work. And you had illiterate boys being drafted into the army. They didn't know right from left. So they put an egg in his right hand and a potato in his left hand. Egg, potato, right, left, egg, potato. It's actually happened. What happened to the egg crack? You had the smelly and dirty. Cracked egg, potato. The potato didn't crack. Okay, so what are you holding in your right hand? It's funny. Okay, we'll hold the Rambam in the right hand. The Rambam looks like this. And the page I just gave is the Buddha on your left hand. Now notice they're both numbered. Right? They're both numbers.
Yes.
The numbers reflect our text. The numbers reflect our text. In other words, there's a missing number because we have words that the Rambam doesn't have. If there are asterisks in your text, it's because they have words that we don't have. So you start from the beginning. Number one, in both, Baruch Sha'alma V'haya Eila Baruch Hu, that works, correct? Both texts are the same. Baruch Oima V'Eiseh, that works. Both are the same. Baruch Geizim Kayim, that works. Both are the same, right? Now, here's the first difference. In the Abudraham, which is in your left hand, you have the words Baruch Eiseh V'Eishes, which the Rambam doesn't have. Now, the reason that Rambam doesn't have it, and I don't know, I never spoke to him about it, is because this is the one that's the free radical. We don't count Baruch Eiseh V'Eishes as one of the 10 utterances, so it's not in his text. Yet Abudraham and Sefer HaMelamed and Yehuda Ben Yaakov and most Rishonim do. Some people have it near the beginning, which is where we would have it. Some where they have it, and some people where we have it, which is at this point. Okay, so in the Rambam those words are missing. In the Abudraham those words are present. I talked about it twice. Once where we have it and once where other people have it. Keep going. Baruch Merachem Al Aretz. That's number 5, correct? Baruch Merachem Al Abrias. That's number 6. We just finished that. Now, because Baruch Eiseh V'Eishes is not counted, number 6 actually is the 5th utterance. You with me? And the word Baruch Merachem Al Abrias is being very good, and I appreciate it. Is this? It's the 6th line of the Baruch Sha'alma. It's represented the 5th utterance. It means that this earth is a living planet. It's blanketed with life, so everyone has an easy time making a living, as per the last class. Now, what should come next? Look at the Rambam. Baruch Ma'avir Afela Umevi Oira. I put a star on that. You see? Why did you put a star on it? Because it's not in our text. What comes next? Baruch Mishalem Socher Tev. That has a 7, correct? Because we have it in our text. Now look at the Abudraham. Look at your left hand. What comes after number 6? Number 7. Baruch Mishalim Sacha Te'Lereah. Correct? Then comes number 8, which is Baruch Kel Chai La'ad V'Kaim L'Netzach. If you're looking at your right hand, it's much lower down. It's 2 lines down. You have Baruch Kel Chai La'ad V'Kaim L'Netzach. In other words, these 2 texts of Siddur started out pretty much the same, but they have diverged. They've gone in different directions, correct? So the Rambam has, after number 6, the words Baruch Atmavir Afelo maybe Oila. Then he has number 7, Baruch Masham Tzachar Teg V'Reyav. And then he has 4 asterisks. Baruch She'ein Lefanav Lo Ya'avlav Lo Yishich Lo Yikazav Lo Yimenu Lo Yimasei Pan Lo Yimach HaShechel. You see it? We have it on the left side of the page also. After the first asterisk comes the 4 asterisks. Baruch she'ein lefanav he has avla v'lei shikha v'lei matzikon v'lei matzikon. You see that? Right? Now, if you assume, as we're all doing, that Baruch she'amad is there, each line represents one of the 10 utterances. So Baruch Eiseh V'Eishes made us nervous, and now it's in there, but we don't count it. Fine. Okay? But you at least assume that they go in order. The 6th utterance is that there should be a sun and the moon and the stars in the sky, okay? That's represented by the words Baruch Ma'avir Afela Mevi. Everybody know Hebrew. Baruch Ma'avir Afela Mevi Ora. Now you understand. He removes darkness and he brings light. What does that sound like? The sun, the moon, and the stars. Does it not? Yes, right. Thank you for saying yes. I do appreciate it. So after line 6 should be the first asterisk. Baruch Ma'avir Afela Mevi Ora. You see that? But the Abudraham got it all mixed up. He doesn't have it till after number 8. You see what I'm showing you? I'm juxtaposing 2 nusachs. Girls, the handout I gave you has 10 nusachs. I'm just singling out 2 because it's confusing enough just to look at 2 of them. What's weird is that Rambam's nusachs got the right order. The Abudraham is the one who's explaining it. He's got the wrong order, which drives me insane. This morning, I almost broke my nose. They only almost didn't get out of bed. Everything else. Okay. Now look, this is really weird. What the Abudraham does is he brings you the wording of Baruch She'amar in his order. And by each line, he just tells you a pasuk. This line is this pasuk, this line is this pasuk. The word we just read before, Baruch Menachem Rias, is Menachem L'Kol. After you go to the whole Baruch She'amar, he starts again. But now he's not saying his own word, he's quoting his best friend, the Sefer HaMalamed. And the Sefer HaMalamed is the guy who connects the Baruch She'amar to the 10 utterances, but he got a different order. The problem is, if you look at the Sefer HaMalamed's text, you'll see he also has it out of order. In other words, Sefer HaMalamed tells you that there's 10 Baruchs that correspond to the 10 utterances, but his version of Baruch She'amar is more similar to the Abu Draham than it is to the Rambam. And as a consequence, even the Sefer HaMalamed, who's the one who tells you that there's 10 Baruch that correspond to the 10 utterances, has them in the wrong order. Now, why should I be surprised? Since when has the Torah ever been accommodated? It's always like this, right? And then there's a why and there's a because, and it's so much fun. It'd be boring if they behaved, huh? But this is what happened this morning. I got to prepare the class, and I was really, okay, no, next. I've been having a good time. You have to understand, preparing these classes is very hard. But the hardest part of doing these classes is sort of getting a direction. You know? I got one. I've been working on Baruch She'amar 2 years. I finally feel like I know I'm going to teach it. We're going to teach it according to the Rishonim, and then after that, we're going to learn about Mount Torah, Shavuos, then we're going to go back and teach it according to the Mekubalim. And I feel like I have a sense of how we do Baruch She'amar. So every morning I got to take about an hour and a half to prepare these classes, and I wrote notes. These are today's notes. I wrote this morning, a new piece of paper. And then I find out that the order is off. It just spun me. It just moved. Now, it's not a problem. Why? Because it doesn't have to be in order. Okay. So the Baruch She'amar represents, Baruch She'amar has 10 extra Baruchs. There's more than 10, okay? There's at least 12, maybe 13, maybe 11, maybe 15, depends on you ask. There's so many opinions. Last year, 2 years ago, when I taught Baruch She'amar's introduction, I went through all the opinions on the Baruchs there are and the reasons for that. Okay, but we're going with the number 10 is just what's working for us, okay? 10 utterances of creation, 10 Baruch, at least 10 extra Baruch. But nobody ever said they got to be in order. The fact that they were in order until now was just convenient. And now, they're spread out wherever they are in Baruch She'amar, but we're going to go in order. Because we're going to follow the Rambam. Why? Because he says what we want him to say, that's all. Not because we like the Rambam, because the Rambam likes us. Because in the Rambam's version, first of all, he takes out the Baruch HaSeparations. He takes out the free radical. He takes out the Baruch, which doesn't mean one of the other things. But the next one in line is Baruch Mavet Afelu, maybe Elu, which belongs next. He takes away dark, brings in light. There's the sixth utterance of creation. Hashem said there should be a sun, Hashem said there should be a moon, and Hashem said there should be stars. So the Rambam's order, this is the nusach of the Payment. Every Yemenite Jews to this day use this Siddur. I bought a book called Siddur HaRambam. I don't think it's Siddur HaRambam, it's Siddur Payment. There's 2 Yemenites to do it, the 2 Yemenite communities. There's the Biladai, the Baldi, and there's another one. Shemi and Baldi. Shemi are the Yemenite Jews who were swept away by the fever of Kabbalah, and they changed their tradition. The Baldi, Alaton Biladai, which in Hebrew means exclusive, they held on to the ancient tradition of the Yemenites, which is Maimonides, Rambam. The Yemenite Jews, take a look at a map where Yemen is. Yemen is at the very, very bottom of the Arabian Peninsula. Yemen is Asia. Egypt is Africa, and they're separated by the longest gulfs in the world. Yemen is 1,000 miles away from Egypt, close to us, it's very far away. But they were in touch with the Rambam, and the Rambam was their Rebbe. But the Yemenite Jews in Kaddish used to say, Kaddish is about Mashiach. The Yatzbach, Bakoni, Bikari, Mashiach, about Mashiach, right? They put into Kaddish the Rambam's name. That's how connected they were to the Rambam, and they adopted the Rambam's law, they adopted the Rambam's custom, they adopted the Rambam's philosophy. Now, in the last few hundred years, it's become a big controversy because the Rambam was a philosopher. He was not a mystic. and mysticism and philosophy are really, really very different, fundamentally, deeply. And the way I understand the history was that the Yemenite Jews, like all of Sfardim, we call them Sfardim, it's the biggest insult, never call a Yemenite, never call a Persian, an Iranian, a Sfardi. They're not Sfardim, they're Persians and they're Yemenite. But okay, Sfardi actually means that you come from Spain. It doesn't mean you live in Syria or Iraq or Jordan or Turkey or Lebanon. It means that you come from Spain, which is another whole conversation. But they get very insulted because they're not Sfardim. They're Yemenites, they're Taman. The Iranian community, the Persians, they daven, they become Mizrach, they daven their classic, what we call the Sfardic Nusach. It means the Jews from the east, from the Mediterranean region. They daven the same Nusach as the Jews of Iraq, and Jordan, and Syria, and Egypt, and Lebanon, and Libya, and Morocco, and Tunisia, basically the same Nusach. But the Yemenites got their own thing. What happened, the Yemenite community, the way I understand it, is they were also deeply affected by Kabbalah, and then there was a pushback. At some point, Rabbi said, wait a minute. We have our own tradition. Why did we sell out to the great Arizal? That's really what happened. And there became a split with people who called Shemi. Shemi have to do it as Israel. So they maintain that they should follow other Sfardic groups, other the Mediterranean Jews, who did much of their liturgy and their custom according to Kabbalah. And then you had the purist Yemenite. No, we're going back to philosophy, we're going back to Rambam. And there was a Jew in our time who was a great, I don't know what the right word is, a warrior, a great advocate for this particular type of Yemenite Jew, whose name was Rabbi Yosef Kapach. He's a man of great controversy, he was, but he was also a man of great genius, incredible genius. He rewrote all of the Rambam's texts. The Rambam wrote in Arabic. He translated them into Hebrew. And forgive me for saying blasphemy, his translations are much better. The translations that were written during the Rambam's lifetime, which the Rambam saw and approved. The Rambam our Rebbe, had enormous respect for Rabbi Kapach, notwithstanding that certain of his beliefs are not, we don't agree deeply. Okay, but the Rebbe was one of those rare Jews who didn't either like you or hate you. He could like this and not be happy about that. He didn't hate Peter Bachlal, it wasn't his business. But the Rebbe of Kapach, who probably passed away 25 years ago, maybe less, was a staunch representative of this Baldi, I like to call it Bil Adai, which is the word the next week, Pasha Mikdash, 2 weeks from now, Bil Adai, which means exclusive. I made that up. It's not the word is Baldi. They went back to following Rambam. So I bought a book called Siddur Rambam. It's Siddur Teiman, according to the Nusach of the people that call themselves Bali, who didn't follow the wave that swept the world, particularly the Mediterranean world, what we call the Sfardic world, with the influence of Kabbalah, of Arizal, of Ramat, of Alchemists. You understand what I'm saying? We're supposed to not now. So the Rambam works best for us. This Siddur Rambam, which is Siddur Teiman, it's the right word. So I just needed to show this. I was compelled to point out to you how complicated it gets. And in another universe where there's no limit of time, and no limit of concentration, and no limit of attentiveness, I would sit down and come up with an explanation for why the Abu Draham, on the one hand, considers the 10 baruchs of Baruch Sha'amah to reflect the 10 other instances, and he puts them in the wrong order. There's a reason. There's a different order. Yeah. But we're not going to get to that. That's much too much. We're going to assume, we're going to go through the 10 passages of the Baruch Sha'amah. We're going to align them with the 10 utterances of creation in the order that they appear in the Chumash, which means we're going to be following Rambam. You understand what I just did? I just wasted 20 minutes of your life. I just showed you something. It's fascinating to see. Some people get very disturbed when they see people disagree with them. I love it. I think the beauty of the Jewish people is the diversity. I really do. I think I'm better. I told you this many times. I grew up in a non-Chabad Crown Heights. Now, if I was my father's age, I would have truly grown up in that. I was at the tail end of non-Chabad. And I saw other Hasidic groups I listened to their song, I watched their dance, I watched how they lived. My children are not seeing that. They're seeing a Nights, which is basically Chabad. I think I'm better for it. I'm not less of a Chabadnik, at least I think I'm not. But seeing how other people, it's not just what words they use, the way they sing, the way they dance, the way they eat cholent. Their whole culture is different than ours. You're better by being able, you don't have to be, you don't have to adapt other people's customs, but you should see them. And the Siddur is a place where this comes out in a profound way. Everybody does a little different, and everyone has a very good reason. So we're going to go with the Rambam, even though Abu Draham is the most important commentary. I'm always going to go back to him, but he's got the wrong order. It's so much fun. It drives you nuts. Okay, so we're doing now the 6 articles of creation. Obviously, it's going to be next time. I'm not going to be a Wednesday next. I'm going to be in Florida, but I hope 2 Wednesdays next, which is going to be Hanukkah. Unless I chicken out and don't show up, I'll try to come. You'll be here. We'll learn another class. We're going to be learning about the 6 articles of creation. Hashem said there should be a sun and a moon and stars, and it's represented by the words, which are perfect words. Blessed be he who took away darkness and replaced it with light. Words, okay? I just want to leave you on a clip. I just want to leave you with a clip. I have a father. That's right. I have a father. I wasn't hatched out of an egg. I was hatched out of an egg, but I was carried and I was delivered. But I have a father. And the miracle is, Baruch Hashem, my father's still alive. My father is a very interesting man. And a terribly stubborn. I've known him my whole life. He's been educated, raised me since a little baby. And I've grown up to do whatever he says, then to argue with everything he says, and then to figure out how to, to disagree amicably. I mean, I spend a lot of time with my father now, and I'm very lucky for it. I love my father, I respect my father, I try to learn from my father. He used to always say my father's wrong. Now he says things differently than I do. He says things different than I think they're written in Chassidus. But my role is not to disagree, but to hear what he has to say. And even if I disagree, I gain by listening to his unique approach. He's a very original man. One of the most, in Chabad Chassidus, he's one of the most original thinkers, really. On the one hand, he's unbelievably refreshing, really. Because if you listen to him talk, Chassidus really becomes relevant. It's not just esoteric. But he can drive you mad with his insistence that go this way, and everybody else, including my mother, go in another direction. That's just it. So one of the many, many things he's pointed out to me, which I agree with, otherwise he wouldn't be here, is a wonderful little thought. In Hasidus, they talk about sunlight, and they talk about moonlight. They talk about starlight. It's explained mystically. All of them are different. Okay? When Hasidus talks about sunlight, they change the language. They say sunlight is daylight. They never say moonlight is nightlight. It's moonlight. They never say starlight is nightlight. It's starlight. But sunlight is daylight. Oir Hagoy, Oir Hashemesh is called in many Maimorim Oir Hayeh. My father asks me in this style. He never tells me, he always asks you a question and makes you feel very stupid, and then he gives you his answer. So he did that on this occasion also. Used to it, Baruch Hashem, no complaints at this point. Why is sunlight called daylight? Sunlight is daylight. Daylight is sunlight. We all understand that, right? But we never say it about the light of the moon or the stars. My father offered me an insight, which is classic him. It really it's a microcosm of his philosophy, of how he thinks about what Hasidus is about. And it's really very unique, and he's so correct about this. On the fundamental level, he's absolutely correct. Sometimes his details I disagree with, but his idea is so correct. He says nobody thinks of sunlight as light. The moonlight is light. Why? The world is dark and there's a moon that allows you to see where you're walking. creates shadow, darker shadow, lighter shadow, helps you navigate. When the sun is shining, how does it feel? The sun isn't giving you light. The world is just illuminating. Meaning, the moonlight is like a flashlight. Starlight is like flashlights. Sunlight's not a flashlight. The world is bathed in light in the kind of way. It's just an illuminated world. Meaning the sun doesn't bring light into darkness. It makes light natural. The moon brings light into darkness. The stars bring light into darkness. Even though they provide light, but you feel like it's dark and you need to have a light to help you navigate. The sun changes the world into a place of light. And Chassidus indicates this by saying sunlight is called daylight. Why? Look in the Bible, look in Bereshit, look in Genesis. Vayikra Elokim la'oyer, Hashem calls light yoim, day. It calls darkness night. I want to remind you, on the first day of creation, God created light and dark, right? But the sun and the moon and the stars were not created till Wednesday. So we don't know what light even means on the first day. We don't even know, we know what darkness means, right? Darkness is an absence of light. We don't know what darkness means on the first day. You follow what I'm saying? So the Chumash says light is equated with day, which means day is equated with light. The daytime is not a time when the darkness of the world is illuminated. There's no darkness. The night is a time when the darkness is illuminated by light. The day is not a world with the darkness. Now, physically, chemically, biologically, scientifically, what I just said is wrong. What are you talking about? Take the sun away, the world freezes in an instant. But mystically and philosophically, and we're going to explore this in 2 weeks hence when we reconvene. I'm planting a seed for you to think about over the next couple of weeks. When we come back, I'm going to elaborate on it. Torah has a unique version of the world. It doesn't disagree with science. It just explains it differently. Science tells you the nature of the physical universe. Torah tells you the nature of the purpose of the physical universe. And they're very different. What's the difference? According to science, the Earth is one planet around one star in one galaxy of billions. According to Torah, everything that the Eibishter made serves this tiny little Earth and the few little chevra walking around on it. And from that point of view, the sun and the moon and the stars are very, very different. I mean, we all understand that there are so many stars in the sky, and the sun is only one of them. And the sun is only, quote, an average star, it's not even a large star. Right? But when you think about the sun and the moon and the stars, not in terms of how physically large they are and what they're chemically made up of and how they produce the energy they produce, but rather, laha'ir al ha'oretz, to give us light. There's a very big difference between the sun and the moon and the stars. Because the sun makes daylight. Ma'avir afela takes away darkness, or maybe makes light natural. Natural. Isn't it a pity that the Alter Rebbe decided to take these words out of Baruch Shama? Because he stuck with the 87 word thing. The Rambam didn't care about 87 words. I will see you in 2 weeks hence. Okay, Belina did. Thank you for coming. Yep. I
Thank you.
On this. I made the coffee and it kept me awake. I didn't even drink it. Okay, we're good. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing my job. I think. I hope. You're all welcome. Okay.
Wow.
Happy Kislev, happy Hanukkah, and I'll see you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.